How's it going, guys? My name is Cody, and I have another fight analysis video for you, this time on Dennis Ljungqvist. Now, he's a very strong fencer and has a ton of tournament experience. He also has a rather no-bullshit way of approaching the fight that I think the rest of the HEMA community can benefit from taking a look at. So, let's get going.
Ljungqvist's fencing seems to revolve around seizing moments of opportunity. This can take many different forms, but generally is very straightforward and does not employ the use of deception. We see Ljungqvist test out his opponent's reaction with a light cut to his sword, which also forces his opponent out a post of breve. With the opponent's point out of the way, he then launches a committed thrust to the face.
Que vous avez pu voir tout à l'heure affiché. Donc on rappelle que la tête, voilà, la tête marque pour.
Ljungqvist also attempts a lot of single-time counters and stop parries. This continues the theme of seizing a moment of opportunity, as it must be executed at precisely the correct time in order to be successful. It looks really cool when done correctly, but does lead to a ton of doubles as it is very difficult to react in time, and is somewhat dependent upon correctly assuming what your opponent is going to attempt.
Certainement un peu plus sur Denis.
Toi et moi, un trait sur nos stylos avec le stress.
Oh wow!
This is a good example of both Fuelin and Indes. You see Ljungqvist almost bait his opponent into launching the overhow by stepping in a measure. He blocks his opponent's cut, and upon feeling his opponent has left the bind, immediately makes a cut to a new opening.
Denis.
Toi et moi, un trait sur nos stylos avec le stress. Oh
Wow!
On occasion, Ljungqvist will remain in the bind, but interestingly, instead of moving to grapple and pommel strike, he drives his opponent's arms up before making a powerful strike to the abdomen.
aidé par 4 assesseurs, évidemment. C'est phase plus importante.
Magnifique.
Très bel stop.
Ljungqvist uses thrusts offensively quite well and often, but also launches thrusts into an attack or to interrupt his opponent's action. When Cool tries to overpower Ljungqvist, Ljungqvist just thrusts in. This is also a good example as to why it is important to feel out how your opponent reacts to threats, as a defensive opponent may attempt to parry a cut, a more aggressive opponent will simply launch their own attack, for better or worse. And Ljungqvist is a very aggressive opponent. One of his most common attacks is this kind of windmill cut to his opponent's knees. Interestingly, when someone else cuts at his knees, he just blasts in with a cut to the head. I don't know if I should categorize this as a pro or a con. Granted, I would rather live with a limp than be dead, and this is a good way of punishing fencers who go for snipes but can't defend the afterblow. But it is still a double. Sometimes Ljungqvist does what I consider the ideal solution to this kind of attack, which is pulling the knee out of the way while still striking the opponent's head. But the majority of the time he takes the hit to the knee and charges in for the afterblow or double. Ljungqvist does execute his own long-range sniping kind of hits, but I will note the nice defense against the afterblow. Now, for all the positives of Ljungqvist's fencing, and all that I believe people can learn from it and apply to their own fencing, I would be remiss if I did not also point out the cons. Out of all the top-tier fencers I have analyzed so far, Ljungqvist has the highest amount of doubles. Now, I know people fence differently at tournaments and under various rule sets, so take what I say with a grain of salt. But it was common enough in the tournament footage that I didn't feel comfortable leaving it out of my analysis.
Et
Karl se jette
il se
sur...
fait
Qui rêve très tôt d'ailleurs, très très tôt, car Thomas avait une petite erreur sur le parcours. Il a perdu un combat bien placé dans le rating, donc il s'est regardé les vidéos. Ah.
To be honest, a lot of the exchanges I've watched of Ljungqvist, he did not make any attempt to block his opponent's cut or thrust, and instead prioritized making a strike of his own. Ljungqvist fences very well in the vol, but when he finds himself in the knock, it seems, at least to me, that he forces the double in order to nullify his opponent's points.
So there's a lot of positives that I think people can benefit from if they incorporate it into their own fencing, which is the whole point of this video. But there is that one rather significant negative. Now, I'd say his whole fencing revolves around taking the vol with a very strong thrust or a cut to the knee, and he does have some variety of techniques such as those single-time counters and bind walk, and he's very good at punishing people who snipe or who fail to defend against a potential after blow. But there is that one negative, and that one negative actually made me hesitant about even making this video because I've never felt all that comfortable with being critical. And that's a rather big critique, probably the most harsh critique I'm ever going to do in this fight analysis series. But I cannot say that if someone is cutting at your knee and you make no attempt to address that threat and you just kind of force a double, I can't say that that is good fencing. As uncomfortable as it makes me, I'm going to stand by my critique that that is not good fencing. Now, this isn't someone who is new to HEMA, that it might just be an accident. Oh, he's so excited that the second he saw his opponent leave a gold, he just threw a cut and he didn't read the fight well, and it's just organic. I don't think that that's something that's going on here. Maybe a couple of them, but I think Dennis Ljungqvist has enough skill and enough experience in the tournament scene that this is a rather intentional aspect of how he's approaching the fight at the tournament. Now, everyone fights differently at tournaments, and I understand that rule sets change people's fencing, so I'm not going to assume his rationale. But that doesn't change the fact that that is not good fencing. And I'm not entirely positive what the solution to this issue is, but when someone fences like that, doesn't address the threat coming in at them and just attacks, the people running the tournament have to try to create all these complex rule sets to address that approach to the fight. And this is very much a hot button issue in HEMA. This isn't something that I've heard anyone have a concrete solution to. But in my eyes, I don't think the solution is going to come from more complicated rule sets that punish doubles or anything like that. I think it has to happen on the individual level, that each one of us has to approach these fights in a specific mindset, that we're going to address a threat, that we're going to do our best to hit our opponents and not get hit ourselves. And I think that's really where it begins. You can't begin treating something if you don't at least accurately diagnose it. And I think that's where this conversation needs to start. We need to start identifying what bad fencing is. And I think if you do nothing to address a threat that's coming in at you, that is bad fencing. So I know that got a little bit ranty, but despite my critique, I still think that there's a lot to learn from Dennis Ljungqvist's fencing. I think you kind of need to know what to take and what to leave behind, but there's a lot that people can benefit from, and he is very skilled, and I really want this analysis to be received in the right way, that this is a learning tool, not just me ranting to be a dick. But I really hope that you enjoyed this video, and I look forward to making the next video in this series.